Today on Podcast Perspectives, we're joined by Sarna, founder and CEO of Cloud10 Media.
Just because you have a good show or a show that people like or a few people like doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a massive success.
What's one myth about the podcast business?
That you can just push a button and all of a sudden you have tons and tons of ads and host-read ads that pay enough money.
We'll talk about what's changed in the podcast sales landscape and how Cloud10 is adapting and thriving in today's market. Welcome to the show, Sim.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's an honor to be here. I've been listening, watching your show for a long time, and I know many of the previous guests that you've had on, and it's a real honor to be among that group.
I appreciate that, and the feeling's very mutual. I've been watching what you're doing with Cloud10 for years and have been looking for an excuse to talk to you, so I'm glad we found one.
I wanted to give you a compliment up and start that you've just been doing some amazing work. There's so many different aspects of podcasting. So just want to take a minute just to let you know that it's a real honor to talk to you as well.
Well, thank you very much. So I want to start by walking through your early career. You actually didn't start in audio. So what drew you to podcasting?
I just love the fact that you can take, your favorite, radio shows with you anywhere. I remember, I was a huge fan of Howard Stern, so I guess you could call that a podcast in a way. But then when the Stern Show came on the Sirius app, whatever it was, 2012 or whatever that was, I guess those are podcasts, right? And so I love that aspect of it. Otherwise, you couldn't leave your car if you were listening to a great interview, a long form interview. But I was listening to podcasts way back in the day, and I loved Adam Carolla when he switched from radio over to podcasting. And I think that's when I kind of discovered what it was, and he was touting all of his records that he broke for downloads back in the day. I remember that. And then Chris Hardwick had a really good podcast. I think it was called Nerdist. I think he renamed it something else, but that was another one that I listened to. But then Serial 2014, Serial was the breakthrough. I mean, it was great for so many reasons. And I know you remember this, Jeff, but also the fact that you could get podcasts easily on your phone because of the purple, the Apple made that the default button, the purple button. And then the speeds of the phone, the LTE made things easier to download and stream. That to me was very interesting. It was really interesting. Like, how do I get to be a part of this world? And that's what I always thought about when Serial came out.
I had a friend that actually in high school burned me a CD with like 5 episodes of This American Life. And I say that's my first podcast that I ever listened to, even though it was like basically radio back then. But yeah, I mean, it was transformative when you could just pull out your phone or your iPod or something, and you still had to go and plug it into your computer and download an episode of a podcast and everything. But it just dramatically changed the way that you could consume any kind of media.
Yeah, and then of course, around that time also, do you remember when Apple CarPlay became almost like, every car was getting the Apple CarPlay. You can just plug in a cord and then all of a sudden your podcasts are now in your car as well. I mean, this is before, every Tesla has the standard buttons that you can push. But that was a big deal to me. I mean, that was huge having that on demand.
I got my first car in 2015, 2016 that had like the wireless Bluetooth connection, and like it was a game changer. Can you walk us through a little bit about what you were doing before podcasting? You were a film producer, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I went to USC Film School, which is where I actually teach podcasting now. So almost full circle. I've been teaching at USC since 2017, a class called Creating the Hit Podcast. I went to the film school there, and when I was there, it was all about the independent film scene was really big. So Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, and that was really big amongst all the students. And that's I really wanted to become an independent filmmaker, but I was interning at the time for James Cameron, and this is post Titanic, and it was just the biggest thing out there. And I worked a little bit there at Lightstorm before I kind of broke off to do what I really wanted to do, which was make movies, and started raising money for independent films. And these are movies that cost millions of dollars, but it was just a hard business. It was tough because as much as I love the whole process and love doing it, just it's like start every single movie at the time was like starting your own business, and you have to raise all the money, and just raising the money alone for me was a home run. I couldn't believe I got people
Yeah.
to invest their money into a movie, but I did that 5 times, even though these movies didn't really make any money. But that taught me a lot. It taught me kind of everything I needed to know that trying to transition into podcasting. Luckily, I around 2015, I was talking to my close friend Anna Faris. I did a movie with her a long time ago. And Anna Faris is Unqualified, which we launched in November of 2015, was probably the first celebrity podcast. I mean, if you really think about it, it's a pure celebrity podcast. And where we brought on big celebrities and they were eavesdropping on some really cool conversations with other big movie stars like Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. And it was a big deal when it came out. And great show. And I'm so proud of it. And it did really well. It did really well, and that kinda, launched everything.
How did that come about? Was that your idea or Anna's idea or kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a
we talked about it together. She was a big fan of cereal, and that's when we said, "Well, let's figure out a way to really, do a podcast that makes sense, that really works for her." And it was an advice show. It's a celebrity advice show for the most part, but, drew a lot of inspiration from, like, Adam Carolla's old Loveline show and, combined a couple of other podcasts and then just, like, and mostly on Anna and her personality and who she wanted to talk to, and it just worked, and then from there, started to do other celebrity shows with Kate Hudson and Sophia Bush and Busy Phillips, Topher Grace, Alyssa Milano, a few others before Cloud 10 really kind of launched in 2019.
And how did you structure this? When you decided to launch Anna's show and then later when it became Unqualified Media, was that there was some kind of business and you had a stake in that business? Was it more of like a fly by night thing when you first started?
Yeah, no, we really was, a partnership. So we started the show and then we had a couple of shows underneath and then we separated ways, I think 2019, so I could go ahead and just, concentrate on Cloud 10.
Why start a new company as opposed to continuing with what you were doing?
You know what? This was just something where I wanted to do everything, where I wanted to have a full network where you could, do all the production, all the marketing, all of the monetization, just kind of do what I kind of saw as as what I would want from a full network. And it's tough to find, a lot of the larger networks, unless you're that show where they want to take care of you because you're bringing in a lot of revenue. It's really tough to find that kind of network where you have that kind of love and attention.
And so walk us through like what is Cloud 10? What's the elevator pitch?
Cloud 10 is a place where creators can really feel safe about being taken care of as a show, whether it's production, where we'll do all of the production, all of the post production, all of the clips for all the different social platforms. And then we'll also grow your show because we have a network of over 100 shows. Triton ranks us number 12 or 13, right about where Lemonada is. So we have enough downloads and impressions to promote the shows within our network. And then Saiba, who is my sister, she pretty much runs all of our operations and all of our revenue. She does an amazing job of getting the host revenue, the endorsements, the 60-second ads that the hosts read. Like, obviously, Jeff, that they pay the most in terms of CPM. And they're the ones that in my opinion, I feel like that the listeners really like to listen to. They those are the ads that you don't really skip because you want, especially if you have a relationship with that host. You want to, and I love Conan O'Brien's podcast. Is probably my favorite podcast, and I'll never skip his ads. I mean, they're hysterical. Those are the ads that we, specialize in and concentrate on. So we have a mix of shows that we produce ourselves. A lot of them are recorded and filmed in our studio in Larchmont Village, actually right next door to Conan O'Brien's, very close to Conan's. That's a coincidence. And then we have a bunch that just are on our network that we don't do any of the production, but we handle all the promotion and the monetization. So it's a nice mix.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a new breed of network that popped up, between 5 and 10 years ago. It's very similar to what Podglomerate is. And it's different from like, some of the bigger networks that may want to have like full ownership of everything that they put out, but it gives you more flexibility. So, given that, I wanted to ask you how you've seen like the ad market change in the last 5 years or since you launched Cloud 10, like what's working today, what is less effective than it once was when it comes specifically to ad sales.
A lot of these advertisers, they want to make sure that they get as much value for their spend. There's a lot of attribution pixels, whatever they want to use to make sure that they're getting their money's worth. And of course, the conversions, making sure that you'll get renewals if there are enough conversions where enough people are typing in that promo code. So it's harder to get those ads. It's hard to get renewals, I believe. You have to make sure that if you're selling a show at 50,000 downloads per episode, you better make sure that it will deliver 50,000 downloads per episode. So that's the difference that I've seen over the years. I'm sure you've probably seen the same thing.
It's a little bit more sophisticated than it once was, and you mentioned all of this. People are able to actually track this stuff via technology solutions as opposed to written reports as they once were. And I think a big piece of that is just there are more shows than ever before. So like, it's a buyer's market as opposed to a seller's market. And that has definitely changed the mechanics and the economics of all of this a little bit. You guys still work with quite a bit of celebrity talent in the network. Do you ever know, like, when a project starts, like, this is gonna go well versus this won't? And what are those factors that come in?
Jeff, so I've been a part of over 100 launches now. That's crazy, right? Because we're launching probably, one or two originals every single month. So it's and I've been doing this for a while. I've been shocked. I've launched shows with some of the biggest celebrities you can think of. There's one in particular, I'm not going to say who it is. She's no longer on the network, but she's a huge, huge star with millions and millions and millions of followers. And you would think it is a slam dunk, just a couple of social posts, and I've seen a fraction of her audience on social, and we're in this show is, insanely profitable, but it just did not get even remotely close to where you would think the number in your mind would be if I told you the celebrity is, and it just never took off from there for whatever reason, and I don't know what it is. You can blame a bunch of different things, and sometimes it is, was a launch effective? Did you promote it properly? But there are just a lot of times where, you're even if you have a massive audience, maybe your audience doesn't want to see you or listen to you in that form, in long form. Maybe they want to see you just in social and for what you're known for. And then on the opposite, there are shows there. I remember, a couple in particular where I just decided to greenlight them as a favor, and I didn't think anything would happen with them. And then they end up becoming, insanely profitable shows that are still going right now. I won't mention which ones those are either because that's unfair. But honestly, I'm surprised. I'm surprised all the time. But Jeff, I'm sure you've experienced something similar to that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's all about what can hit the zeitgeist at the right point in the right way. And sometimes you have a winner and sometimes you have a loser. And sometimes it is a reflection of just the quality of the show, but most of the time it's a reflection of where the market is at. And so it's really tough. But I don't know that there's any silver bullets to working with any talent, period. But sometimes you have some kind of celebrity talent and you think that they're going to be a handful to work with, but they're really not. Like they're very professional and they understand what's needed. And most of the time, I'd prefer that over some of the clients that you get otherwise. You talked a little bit about show growth and show launches. What are some of the things that you do when you launch a new show? How do you ensure that something is going to find its best footing when you put it out there?
That's a good question. It's really tough to ensure anything is going to, launch the way you hope it would launch. But you do your best to stack the deck with whatever you have available. And for us, it's really we're fortunate enough to have built a network with over 100 shows, many, many, many millions of downloads. We reserve markers for promotion for all of our shows. So when we have new show launches, it's very easy for us to stick 20-second promos across the aligned shows, take, clips and drop them into the feeds of the shows that are willing to accept them, or the ones that we own, we can put them in directly. I gotta tell you, it was a lot easier back in the day when Apple only received about 10,000 submissions a week. I can't imagine how many submissions they receive now. But if you are lucky enough to get, the placement in the browse page, especially right up front where you don't have to swipe over, that's great. That's fantastic. And and then of course, if you have hosts that can get on other shows, whether it's shows on my network or on other networks. And what I do is I just pick up the phone and I call up some of my friends that run other networks, and I see if they'll have the host on, and then we'll do the same. We'll always do these swaps with, and thankfully, and I know you've experienced this, Jeff. Everyone so far, still to this point, all of us, we're all still very nice to each other in the industry, and we'll help each other out, and I'm thankful for that. If everything happens the right way, then maybe you can get to a point where you're on your way. I mean, I've seen breakout overnight hits right off the bat, but I love the shows that just grow incrementally over time and get to that point where they have this audience that just loves them and sustainable, and you could continue to monetize that audience and continue to grow that audience over time. The ones that are really stick with you. Those are my favorite shows.
I have a few new ones that I've picked up in the last few years, but the majority of the shows I listen to, I've been listening to for a decade now.
It's hard, right? It's really hard.
It is, and I'm sure you're in the same boat. Like, I will test out new shows every day. You just have to, so you can understand where the market is at. But it's very rare that I go back to that show and listen to more episodes. You know, the beauty of this industry, and sometimes the root of some of its problems is that there's something for everybody. So when it comes to video podcasts, with what you're seeing today with YouTube, TikTok, Instagram Reels, I look at you guys as kind of like one of the go-to resources for how people can be using these platforms to grow their shows. The kinds of creators that you work with, they're all native to these platforms already. So like how do you think about that when it comes to what you're doing in order for growth, in order for ad sales, in order for like, you know, partnerships across your network? Like how do you view video?
It's always changing now. I mean, honestly, I'm for me, every week I'm thinking something different. Like right now, the way my mindset is on video is that just right now, if you take a snapshot of where I'm seeing our company and the revenue that we're making and the growth and the trends that I'm seeing, I'm investing a lot in our studios. We're building out more and more studios because I do see creators wanting a higher end look on video. I'm all for, the whole Zoom setup with the squares and you have your house in the background, your kitchen. I'm all for that, but I know that there are creators now that want to have a higher end look because when you can cut up those clips, just looks better. You have a better chance of having one of your reels go viral or one of your YouTube clips. You're going to cut different length clips of your podcast, right? You have your full podcast, and then you have different promotional type clips or segment clips, and you have a better chance of that going viral, I think, if you have it look better, the set looking better. So I'm investing a lot in that video. I'm not even saying that you're going to make more money off of the video aspect. I still think that, at least for us, we're still making, our best shows that are delivering for our direct response advertisers. We are still making more money from the audio podcast than we are from, anything we are from video. But we are using, our smart hosts are really using YouTube right now as added value, reading the ads on to camera, putting their links in there so we can, they can get more, the chance to get more conversions over to the audio. You'll make money from YouTube itself, from whatever you get from that programmatic end. But then I'm still seeing that in terms of promotion, yeah, getting those clips, getting them to go viral, maybe even if they don't, just driving more and more audience to your podcast. And if you can do that, then you're winning. But I mean, your show should be living everywhere at this point. If it's that type of a show. Not saying that, because we have podcasts that should not be video podcasts, that they're not it's hard, it'll be hard to edit that way. It's just they just belong as an audio experience, and that's completely okay. But if you have the opportunity to invest in video and your talk show, usually it's a talk show, calls for it, and you can get your clips out everywhere, I don't see why you wouldn't do that, honestly.
So now that we've talked a little bit about the ad market with video and audio, are there new revenue streams or business models that you're looking into just beyond traditional ad sales?
Yeah, we getting back to video, we have shows now that we're looking into for fast channels as well. As fast channels are looking for more and more content, it gets back to me talking about having a nice looking studio and set. I just think that even when you're watching podcasts on YouTube on at your home on your big screens, there's just something about watching two people talk over Zoom with the squares. You want a better viewing experience, in my opinion. So we are looking into fast channels as well, like the connected TVs, whatever you want to call it.
What other channels are you looking at?
Yeah, so there's Samsung TV, there's Tubi, there's a bunch that kind of specialize and are looking for more and more content. And if you can curate enough shows that work together, whether it's true crime or health and wellness, then there is some revenue to be made on that side as well. So we're looking into that, and live touring we've been doing for a while. So thankfully we have some shows that have enough of an audience that they want to see them live, and that's great. Whenever you can get out there and see your audience in person and give them that experience, that's always great for so many reasons. So we have that aspect as well as another revenue generator. And then we're continuing to do our branded shows. You know, we've worked with Unilever, Dove, we've worked with Mattel, we've worked with VCA hospitals, BetterHelp in the past, and you know, we can put together all types of shows and even, you know, sell media buys across our network and other networks as well. We love doing it and we do a good job with that as well. You know, you can't just do one thing.
Are you also doing any premium subscriptions?
For some of our shows, that's tougher. We're getting more and more into it, and I'm looking more into that and possibly having our own channel on Apple and seeing all the economics behind that. That's something we are gonna get into this year, possibly maybe possibly do our own true crime channel because we have so many great true crime shows. So that's something I'm looking into. But a lot of our creators, they make money through Patreon as well. And that's great for listeners that don't want to listen to a bunch of programmatic ads. If the show has programmatic ads or ads in general, or if they want special perks, you know, like a free show in their feed or discounts on merch, you know, that's a great option for some of the fans.
Everything that you just said is on someone's roadmap somewhere. It's just a matter of how you execute on that. And the honest truth is like the people who are succeeding the most are the ones who are able to do more of those things more regularly than anyone else. So it's cool to hear that you guys are looking into all of that. And I do think the fast channels are the future, and like Tubi and their Red Seat Ventures acquisition like really underlined that trend.
I'm with you on that.
We talked a lot about the celebrity podcast space to begin with Anna Faris's Unqualified and, you know, the Unqualified Network and a lot of the shows that you are working with now. But I'm curious because you see big celebrity shows. You still have within that, you know, space of household names, you still have the haves and the have nots. You have the smart lists and the Alex Coopers and the Joe Rogan. And then, you know, and I won't say any names, but you have a lot of B-list actors that are getting out there with podcasts and that kind of thing. And some of them are more successful than others. What I'm trying to say is the space has gotten a lot more crowded than it once was. So given that, what in your opinion still works within that niche?
Rewatch shows, love those. They and you know what I mean by rewatch shows, right? So that's, if anyone that doesn't know, it's like there's a popular TV show like Friends or Seinfeld, and then maybe they'd get a couple of the actors or one of the stars of the show, and then they would go and rewatch all the episodes. Maybe they'll bring on cast or crew and talk about the episodes one by one. Those seem to work well, and advertisers also like them a lot, especially for actors that are known for a particular role, you know, from back in the day, you know, that I've seen they can make some substantial revenue, you know, for something that they can do in their living room, you know, and for beloved shows like some of the ones that I just mentioned, or even like Gilmore Girls. I think there are about 3 or 4 different.
Oh, at least there's probably 3 or 400 different rewatch shows. Yeah.
That's an easy way to get into it. And I also think that, you know, and your fans that know you from that show, they want to nostalgia reads for whatever it is. They associate you with that character. They want to hear you talk about what it was like at that time during that moment at that moment when you were filming. They want to hear the inside. You know what it reminds me of, Jeff? Do you remember the DVD commentaries? I mean, you know, the young people listening to the show don't even know what DVDs are, but do you remember you'd watch your favorite movie, then you'd hear like the director and the star, you know, just talk through the entire movie? I mean, this isn't exactly like that, but it just has that feel, right?
It's like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or whatever it
Yeah.
was called back in the day.
I love that show, by the way.
Oh, it's amazing. It's DVD commentary, it's behind the scenes, it's people who can re-engage with the people that they love and the shows that they love and the stories that they love. And I've listened to a bunch of them. Jason Concepcion and Mallory Rubin doing the Game of Thrones rewatch show for The Ringer back in the day
Yeah.
was like catnip for me. I listened to that religiously. Binge mode.
Binge mode.
So where do you see Cloud 10 in a couple of years? Are you guys going to be making more celebrity shows? Are you going to be doing more rewatch shows? Are you going to be just really focused on anything cultural?
Everything, little everything. You know, we're in every category now. And the truth is right now you know, we've been leaning more towards of a female demographic. You know, we have a lot of true crime, a lot of health and wellness, a lot of parenting and kids. And I personally would love to see more male shows. Like for me personally, I would love to see more business and tech, finance, sports, more comedy, more male comedians, and just really build up that side of the business is something I personally want to do. But then I know we love the fact that we've been, you know, growing slowly and growing our team slowly, and we're still, you know, lean enough to move quickly and execute, you know, whenever we want, and we can make any show passes through all of the different checkpoints, and we're excited to continue to grow. We love it. And partnerships. I just, I love this industry so much because, you or any of the other studio heads will they'll always take my call and will always be, we'll always figure out a way to do something together, whether it's a promotional swap or a co-production or whatever it is. There's this really, I haven't seen that type of crazy poaching, competition. And I mean, you're going to
Yeah.
get that. And there has been, and believe me, and a lot of them are sometimes just business decisions, but then I understand that. But for the most part, we still really like each other. Don't you think?
I do, yeah, and it's funny because I think for the first time we're starting to see these things happen, and all of it is just business. The industry is maturing. We need to make decisions that are best for the business. You have a fiduciary responsibility, but it's very funny to see it because it's happening amidst and despite the fact that the entire industry are all best friends with one another. In the very few instances where I've seen this, it's like, the parties don't really know how to respond to one another. It is what I love about the industry. It's what most people do. Most people in podcasting today did not get into it because they wanted to get rich or at least get rich quick. That has been a byproduct of doing something you love for a lot of people. And that's been really cool to see. But most people are in this because they love the medium and not because they want to go and make a quick buck.
Yeah, haven't you noticed, Jeff, that like this is the only industry where billionaires will do a podcast for free. It doesn't really matter. It's like they'll just take because they just love it that much. So it shouldn't really feel like work.
Yeah, and I think it's telling that of the handful of $100 million acquisitions that have occurred in the industry, by my count, half of the people that have sold these companies just went right back into podcasting.
I
So,
saw that. I see that.
yeah.
Yeah, I see that too.
And I'm just like, okay, we're doing something right. So, final question. If you were to start a podcast network today, what would you do differently as compared to when you launched Cloud 10?
I think back and I'm really proud because it took a lot to get here, and we're still not there. We're still growing. We're still building. We still want to, climb that hill. But starting a podcast network right now without serious capital, because I didn't have serious capital. I did it all with my savings, my own savings. It's hard because you need the shows, you need the inventory, and you need to get profitable quickly. It's hard. It's hard to do because starting podcasts from scratch and launching them, and it's just they're expensive, especially if you have a video element right now. All of that takes time. The hours spent producing and post production and launching and marketing, it costs. It all adds up. Even though podcasts still don't cost as much as TV shows and movies or whatever else, it's still something that you can do on your own. It all adds up if you want to do it the right way. It does, there's no guarantee that your podcast is going to be profitable. So I think about that, and I think about wow, starting from scratch, a full network. I would have to raise some serious, serious capital. But I probably would do it over again because again, I love it. I love it so much. I guess the answer is I would do it, but I would probably raise a lot of capital because I think you need it to do it the right way.
Yes, the axiom of you can make a podcast in your basement with a $50 mic is still true. But
Yeah.
you're also going to get a podcast that you make in your basement with a $50 mic. If you want to professionalize it, you just have to put in the time and the effort and the work and the resources. So it's the same way as if you want to become a famous YouTuber or author or, movie producer. Yeah, anybody can make all this stuff with, some pretty inexpensive equipment and time, but doesn't mean it's going to be any good. Well, thank you, Sim. This was so much fun. I'm glad that we were able to do this.
I had a great time. Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me on.
Thank you so much to Sim Sarna for joining us on the show this week. You can find him on LinkedIn or any social network or at cloud10.fm.
For more podcast-related news, info, and takes, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Jeff Umbro. Podcast Perspectives is a production of The Podglomerate. If you're looking for help producing, marketing, or monetizing your podcast, you can find us at podglomerate.com, shoot us an email at listen@thepodglomerate.com, or follow us on all socials at PodglomeratepOds. This episode was produced by Chris Boniello and myself, Jeff Umbro. This episode was edited and mixed by Jose Roman. And thank you to our marketing team, Joni Deutsch, Madison Richards, Morgan Swift, and a special thank you to Dan Christo. Thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you all in a few weeks.